Well, welcome everyone. I know I'm Jennifer Roberts. I'm one of the steering committee members. I'm not the coach here, but today I will be since Chris Cooper, I think, is busy and unable to come. And I will turn over to the co-chairs, but I thought maybe we could start by just introducing ourselves around the screen since this is the first meeting. And happy 2024, everybody. We're in for a fun one. So, Kitty, I'm going to start with you because you're on the top left of my screen.
Okay, I'm Kitty Etheridge. I live in Currituck County. I've worked in elections for probably about 31 years. I started out as a precinct official and ended up becoming the elections director. After my time as the director, I don't know why I felt called to run for county commissioner. I guess because I got mad with a few of them. So I did run for county commissioner, and I'm serving the last of my second term.
Thank you for your service. Next on my screen is Brad.
Good afternoon. My name is Brad Young. I'm the executive director of the North Carolina Institute of Political Leadership, and I live here in Raleigh. I'm from Onslow County originally, and I've worked in the treasurer's office and the auditor's office prior to my time with IOPL.
Sarah Levere.
Hello, everyone. I am Sarah Levere. I am the elections director in Brunswick County, North Carolina. I have been working in county election administration for almost 18 years, and I am currently serving as the president of our State Directors Association. So I am boots on the ground running an election.
Sarah, how often do the state directors meet? Is it once a week or once every two?
Oh, goodness. So we have an official conference every 2 years. We don't meet nearly enough, I don't think. But once every 2 years, we have an in-person conference.
Once every 2 years.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was thinking of the county directors meeting, but yeah, the state directors. See. Yep. Super. Preston Blakely.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Preston Blakely. I'm the mayor of the town of Fletcher, which is in West North Carolina, just south of Asheville. Prior to that, I was a council member for town of Fletcher. And prior to that, I was actually in my grad program, the MPA program in Western Carolina. So I was a student of Chris Cooper, so I'm disappointed to not see him today, but glad to be here with you all.
I'm happy to give him some ribbing for you. Let's see if I can get this right. Fakemi Faktimni?
It's Fikemi Fawahimi. Nice try though.
I tried.
My name is Fikemi Fawahimi. I am originally from Lagos, Nigeria, but I live here in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I am a first-year student at the University of North Carolina School of Law, so that's going really well. But yeah, that's me.
Super. And Myron Pitts.
Go Hills. I am Myron Pitts. I'm the opinion editor at the Fayetteville Observer. I'm a Fayetteville native, lived most of my years here. I've written a lot about voting access, barriers to voting, the importance of voting. My folks were raised in segregated Georgia, so for the first years they were eligible, they could not vote. So it's always been very important to me. And it's nice to be involved with a group that is looking to improve the process.
Andy Jackson.
Andy Jackson. I'm the director of the Civitas Center for Public Integrity at the John Locke Foundation. Live in Raleigh, was raised in Fuquay-Varina.
Caroline Avery.
I'm Caroline Avery. I live in Morganton, North Carolina. I've gotten to hear Preston speak before. He probably doesn't remember. I shook his hand after Martin Luther King luncheon in Asheville. I've worked a bunch in nonprofit and for-profit work, and I'm currently involved in a lot of community things in Burke County and taking care of my my 95 and 93-year-old parents. And I've volunteered a bunch, not a bunch, a little bit in elections. So I'm doing this because Bob Orr twisted my arm and talked me into it. And I want to know more about the election process.
Super. No, everybody can play a helpful and useful role in this work for sure. And last but not least, the glue that holds our commission together, Rachel Capon, who is now back in North Carolina. Woohoo!
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Capon. I'm born and raised in Greensboro, North Carolina. I got my degree in political science from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. Previously served as a legislative assistant in the North Carolina General Assembly before pivoting to work with my husband at our political and public affairs consulting firm. We had the privilege of working with Bob and Jennifer several years ago on the Trusted Elections Tour, and are very excited to be back and helping them with the election commission, and really excited to be a part of this conversation today.
Great. All right. I think I got everybody, right? Super. So Myron, I know that you're one of the co-leads. Is that correct? And I can't remember who the other is. Kitty, are you the other?
So it's Kitty and Sarah.
Yeah,
Oh, Kitty and
right.
Sarah. Okay, sorry.
I'm co-lead of a different.
It's a different one. All right. Kitty and Sarah, you guys are leading this then. So I'm gonna let you guys move on with the agenda, and I'll step in when there are some things that we want to make sure that this committee gets done before the end of the meeting. One of the things we need to do is set the meetings for the the rest of the 6 months. So anyway, all yours now.
Well, I'll jump in first and then I'll let Sarah jump in. We do thank y'all for coming today and participating in our Zoom meeting. This is the first time I've ever conducted a Zoom meeting. I've been participants, but never conducted one. And I just want to say that I appreciate y'all's eagerness to serve. Caroline said her arm had to be twisted, so we do appreciate you serving though. I guess one of the main things is to talk about our purpose and goals for the group here. I guess it's like the rest of the people who've met, is to give people more confidence in the election process. And I feel like sometimes when we talk about candidate file and redistricting and all that, when you're moved into another district, sometimes people get kind of upset, especially if they've had a representative a long time, when they see that they feel like districts are made up of one party, Democrat or Republican, that upsets them too. So I guess our goal is to try to make sure that people understand why we have to do certain things, and then to realize that everything that's done isn't done politically. It's done because of laws that the General Assembly has enacted. And I don't know if Sarah has anything she'd like to add to that.
I just think it's important to know that when it comes to redistricting and the jurisdictions for candidates that hold office, the county boards of elections and a lot of times the state board of elections, we don't really have anything to do with that other than getting the information and making sure the candidates and that our geocode, which is how we use addresses to determine what districts people are in, that we just make it happen. We don't really have any decision-making authority in that.
And I think that is hard for the public to understand, as well as sometimes the candidates, because they get quite upset when there's some redistricting done. And I think one of the topics is about redistricting for the congressional and legislative members. And I think the more we can get the public involved, more information that we can get out to the public makes it easier for people to understand. And I know this year my congressional district has changed. We were in congressional district 3 and now we're in 1. So it's hard for people to understand that, hey, what happened to this fella that used to represent me that I had a good rapport with, and now, he's no longer representing me. But it's like Sarah said, the local or the state board has nothing to do with it. I know a lot of times in the past, and I don't know if they still do it, but they used to have the directors come up to the state General Assembly and go over some of the information. Sarah's shaking her head. No, they don't do that. Because I can remember in the past having to go up to the General Assembly and sit down and show a map of Currituck County, the population and all that. So I guess all of it now is done through the General Assembly. And I know there's session laws that pertain to the House, the Senate, and the congressional district. The only thing that the local board, if I'm not mistaken, Sarah and other members, is that locally for county commissioners, the local boards do change the district lines or not still?
No, that would be through the county commissioners themselves, with the county attorney's office. We don't really have anything to do with that. So I'm really interested to learn how some of this stuff is done, because I'm usually on the backside of district changes and just making sure that candidates and voters are coded correctly. So
I don't know if Rachel wants to add anything to this since she's worked in the House, how some of the House members feel about it. I did look up the session laws for the House. It's Session Law 2023-149. For the Senate, it's Senate Law 2023-146. And Congressional is Senate Session Law 2023-145. They're the session laws that determine how they go about redistricting. And I guess if there's any challenges, any of these, then it would go to the courts. I know the courts in the past have stepped in, and sometimes election dates have been changed, so it does affect it sometimes that way too. Does anybody else have anything to add or comments you'd like to make?
Well,
I can't hear
it's
you.
pretty, I'm sorry, I'll speak a little louder.
Okay.
And I'm assuming most of y'all already know this, but the authority for the state legislative and congressional district drawing is set in the North Carolina Constitution. And right now it is the House and the Senate, they start off their own districts, and the congressional by tradition starts in the Senate, but there's nothing set in stone by that. So one thing we want to consider as we talk about potential reforms in the future is, what can you accomplish via legislation and what you would have to do with the constitutional amendment, which of course is a much tougher road to hoe.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Looking at all the issues involved in voting, I think the average voter, and I'm not speaking for every voter, but I think the average voter, one of the most challenging things that they have, especially in states like North Carolina, where there's so much wrangling over districts, is figuring out who represents them at the district level. Just like you were saying earlier, there's people they look up one day and they're represented by someone else. Our story, our newspaper, the Fayetteville Observer, we did a piece a while back about, and she actually was a former local Republican Party chairwoman, but she wasn't talking about the partisan aspect of it. She was just talking about how she had not moved, her and her husband, and they'd been in 4 different districts, for I believe it was House. So I think anything that as we go through this process, there's a lot I have to learn about it. But as we go through this process, any way we could look at in terms of providing voters with information on how to keep up with these changes, without having encyclopedic knowledge of how redistricting works, just some easy way to know who represents them. I know they can go to the Board of Elections website, but I'm looking for the State Board of Elections website to find out who their representatives are. But I'm looking for a way to sort of demystify this whole process, and let people know who actually represents them. Because I think a lot of probably most voters don't know when it comes to their state, particularly their state house reps and their state senators.
Any other comments?
So may I ask something, Kitty? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so are you asking us right now just to put anything out there that we think is a question that would be helpful? Is that what we're asking? I'm just making sure I'm not going to take us off. Because I've got two things that are kind of surfacing in this county that I think are relevant to this committee.
Yes, let's
Okay.
share, please.
Okay, so one of them is, and our local newspaper has done a great job of trying to get information. We have a 100% local newspaper that's fantastic. It's a weekly newspaper, and they're trying to get information on it, but it's a nobody understands it. So we understand how it happened. We understand that it happened, but nobody understands really how. I mean, why? But in the 2021 General Assembly, they passed a law that affected Burke County and two neighboring counties, Rutherford County and I think Caldwell County. And it basically said that anybody running for the school board starting on January 1, 2024, anyone running for the school board must be affiliated with a political party. Okay, they cannot be unaffiliated or independent. If they are unaffiliated or independent, the only way they can get their name on the ballot is to have 4% of the registered voters in that county, their signatures, verified signatures, date of birth, address, all of that has to be correct at the Board of Elections or the signatures thrown out. People in our county are just saying, is this true for every county across the state, or is it only true for our 3 counties? How can this be fair? We have an incumbent who has served for 3 terms on the school board, but this person cannot put his name on the ballot unless he gets 4% of the registered voters to sign a petition for his name to be on the ballot. And I think people just want to know, is this what's happening across the state? And then 2 other people have come up to me with elderly relatives who have moved here to a retirement community. And I'll spare you the details, but they've gone just to, and these people voted in the 2020 election, and somehow they go to the Board of Elections to make sure they're still registered. And somehow the Board of Elections has that they moved out of the county. And so they just have to re-register to vote. And people have been kind of alarmed by that. And they've asked to see a paper trail. And they've contacted the State Board of Elections to try to get a paper trail, because the local office is saying we have no paper trail of how this happened. It came from the state. It looks weird.
I'll jump in. I'll let Sarah jump in too, because things might have changed. I've been out of office for, the election board office for some years now. But in Currituck County, you run as school board members as nonpartisan. So they're just on the ballot in November, but not all counties conduct their school board election the same way. Some of them are partisan, some of them we have them file for office the same time they file for a party primary. Some counties have the filing at a different time, like they do with soil and water, which is in the summertime. So each county has a different way of, I guess, their school boards, how they're elected. just like county commissioners throughout the state are elected differently in different counties. In Currituck County, we vote, everybody in the county votes on everybody. You have to live in your district to run for office, but everybody in Currituck County gets to vote for you. So it makes it a little different how locally elections are run.
Kitty, does anybody keep data on all that? Is there somebody at the State Board of Elections who says, oh, okay, these 30 counties, they do nonpartisan school board elections, these 70 counties, is there anybody who keeps that data?
Yes, but Sarah?
Somebody at the State Board of Elections would have that because they need that to code our ballots. So they may not care how it's run, but they would have something documented to say how every county has it. So what you were talking about, the 4% signatures, that's for any local office for somebody that's not affiliated with a party to get on a general election ballot. So like right now, I've got somebody running for county commissioner as an unaffiliated candidate because they missed the filing deadline to file to be on the ballot. So like our school board is partisan and has been partisan for the 18 years I've been working here. So I do think that is a county by county thing.
Okay, but for any office, if you're not affiliated with a political party, you have to get 4% of the elected signatures of the elected voters.
If it's a partisan election and if it's in an even year, so I don't think this carries over to municipalities that have like towns and cities. If they have partisan elections, I don't think they have the same rules.
Right. This
Yeah.
this bill tried to include towns and cities in these 3 counties, and the cities and towns raised cane, so they took that out. Okay. Thank
Well,
you.
Sarah, excuse me, Sarah, would not the school board decide how they're elected?
I doubt that. No, I bet it is probably something that the General Assembly would change.
But
That's
I would
how-
think somebody would have to ask for it to be changed.
Yeah, it was a specific bill here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I might add, we actually just had this happen in Henderson County, where I reside, where our legislative delegation, our state senator, and our state representative, they made some pretty substantial changes to our municipal elections and our school board elections, actually. And they filed a local bill, which, for everybody's knowledge, it can be vetoed by the governor. And generally speaking, local bills pass. I'm not sure of an instance where one hasn't. But nevertheless, our legislative delegation changed our school board to partisan this year. So we were applied to those same rules that we're discussing now. In addition to that, our municipal elections were changed to the even years, which there's been a little bit of change throughout the state on that. But generally speaking, municipal elections have been on the odd years throughout the state. But as it stands now, for better or for worse, in Henderson County, our elections changed to the even years, which gave me an extra year on my term. Again, also for better or for worse.
Well, I can say I've already learned something because we have nonpartisan school board elections, and I assumed everyone had that. So I'm I'm learning already. So
And it makes it really difficult if your surrounding counties are different than you are. It makes people wonder how one county can do it one way and another county do it another way. And sometimes when people feel like there's no unity in how things are done, then that makes people sometimes feel like that maybe the elections aren't fair and honest. It's a bad thing to say, but it makes it difficult for people to understand the different ways that, especially the local election, you don't have to worry so much about the congressional and legislative members.
So this is another issue that other committees are looking at, and that is standardization across counties. And, obviously there are a number of issues where you could look at that, since counties really do have a lot of leeway. I've just put in the chat some possible topics for this committee to explore further. In terms of what is the rule now? How many counties do nonpartisan? How many do partisan? What is the rule? What is the best practice? What have other states found? And one of the reasons that standardization was brought up in another committee is that we have a very transient society. People don't just move in from other states, but they move between counties. They also work in one county and live in another, or they know someone who lives in a surrounding county. And so, like you said, Kitty, having contiguous counties with different rules is confusing inherently. So, that's a topic to discuss, what should be standardized. Also, where does local control end and the state, where can the state overrule? I mean, the state can overrule pretty much anything, but again, what is the best practice? Are there certain things this committee thinks should be entirely local? That's something that you all can discuss. One thing I also forgot to say at the beginning is that in the early meetings of this committee, since we are fact finding at this point and discussing, what are the topics to look more deeply into, these are all publicly recorded. They'll be on the website. So if you miss a meeting, you can catch up, etc. However, when we in the near of this process in late May and early June, we're trying to finalize your findings. When we get to deliberation, when people are saying, well, I don't think that should be in the report, I think it should, those will not be recorded so that you can be more open in your discussion. But in the beginning, for the fact finding, when we're finding things out, we're putting topics on the list, this is all public. So, which means you'll be able to go back and listen again. But I just wanted to make that clear. That was something the steering committee had a lot of deliberation about. We will obviously have, a draft report, we'll have a final report, we'll have the media have lots of opportunity to see all that. But there are a few times when we think it would be better for people to have free and open discussion, because we do have many different ideologies represented. So just wanted to say that. So you can look at my list in the chat, and Sarah and Kitty, you can see if you think that they're, if those are good things to pursue as this committee continues to meet.
The only thing about standardizing how elections are done, each county's different. Currituck County doesn't even have any municipalities, so there's no way you can really standardize elections. To me, I just think it would be almost impossible. And I know in some counties, if you live in a district, that's the only person who gets to vote for you. In some counties, they do rankings. Aren't there some counties who are still doing that choice ranking, Sarah?
I don't think so. The ranked choice voting.
Yeah, I thought.
Yeah, I don't think anybody in North Carolina is doing that.
Didn't Hendersonville do it for a municipal election, or did I?
It was tried in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's something we could, bring the research up of when it was tried, where it was used, because that is another committee is looking at whether or not that's a useful way to run elections.
I know you mentioned Hendersonville, and I'm in Henderson County again. You might be thinking about, there was recently a push with all our changes in our elections to change our elections to a plurality, which I know Fletcher now is Hendersonville, and I believe Flat Rock. And the reason we asked our legislators to do that was because we wanted to, even though we were going to the even years, we still wanted to be able to file in July, which I believe it previously was for municipalities, instead of December. But nevertheless, the language in the bill still mandated that we file in December for municipal elections. So I'm not sure if that's maybe what you heard, but there was some stuff happening in Henderson County, particularly for Hendersonville, Fletcher, and Flat Rock.
I guess one of the most important things when we getting back to redistricting for the congressional and legislative members is why it's done. I think the more people can understand that it's constitutional, has to be done. It's done after we have a census, and sometimes you have an area where a lot of people have moved out. So, or a lot of people in Currituck County, a lot of people are moving in. So I think the more we can get information out to the public as to why things are done, the easier it is for them to understand, hey, it's not Sarah there in Brunswick County doing what she wants to do. And so if the more the public is educated about certain issues, I think it makes it easier for them to understand.
And I think, is my understanding that we really have to decide what we think the public wants to know, like kind of at this meeting and maybe the next one. Am I right, Jennifer? Like we can't really cover all the things fully. We kind of need to narrow down what in this category we think people are interested in. I definitely think redistricting.
Absolutely. So a part of our investigations, is figuring out the best way to inform the public. Our population is going to keep growing, so people have to get used to district lines changing. But what is just again, decide which topics you really want to investigate further to get information on how it's done now, to look at maybe some other options in other states. Is it done any differently? And then to settle on, in the end, like Kitty was saying, it'd be really hard to standardize, certain things. And so it's just going to be, different. I mean, that's what you're going to, in the end, with information, looking at some of the hottest topics, like you said, redistricting, you're going to have to come up with recommendations. And some of those may be, we're doing the best way we can. But there may be things like, however, we need better public information because of the confusing nature of our growing communities, that kind of thing. But I don't want to prescribe, what you'll delve into or anything. And I just listed a bunch of things. Maybe you all can send it around an email and think about it and have an informal vote or something. The other thing is we need to figure out how to get public input. I think on redistricting has been a whole bunch of public input, but the professors in the steering committee have access to some of the public polling that is done by Elon and Meredith and some other places. And so each committee is able to submit a couple of questions that they can put into a future poll to gauge public opinion. So the other thing that this committee can do is figure out, is there a question, do you think unaffiliated candidates should have an extra process, or, whatever the polling that you want to get an answer for. We can only take up to 4 questions from each committee. So if you all want to think about what those might look like, again, doesn't have to be decided today. You may want to do it by email, but the sooner you get the polling questions in, the better, because they're going to put a lot of those polls in the field probably right after the primaries, I would think, but maybe before. I don't know. Andy, you may know a little better. You probably work with those folks. No? Okay. Or Brad, do you know those folks? No. Nope. Okay. In any event, those are just, again, a couple of things to consider.
When you talk about how things are done in other states, I think Sarah also has attended a lot of the Sarah classes and probably done a lot of networking with other states. And there is no uniformity whatsoever throughout the nation, none whatsoever. And that makes it hard for people to understand, gives them mistrust. We're right on the border with Virginia, and their hours for election are different. Their provisional balloting is different. Their absentee, one stop, everything's different. And people who move here don't understand. So it makes it difficult. But I will say, talking to other people in other states, I think North Carolina does a really good job. We were one of the first to get the provisional ballots. I'm sorry. We were one of the first to get the provisional ballots in North Carolina. Just so many things on after the election, how they do the hand-to-eye recount. that gives people a lot of confidence in the election, but I just don't ever see there being uniformity throughout the country in elections because North Carolina elections are led by an executive director in the state board, where a lot of other states, you have the Secretary of State, it's more political, which ours is political because of how they're appointed, but it's a lot more political when you have a Secretary of State running an election who's an elected official. So I just don't ever see a whole lot of, we'd be lucky to get a little bit of uniformity in North Carolina. No way we're going to get it throughout the country.
Yeah, we're not even looking at helping other states change. We're just saying, you know, did somebody find a better way to do something that maybe our state's struggling with? That's it. We're not asking for, I think the fact that it's not uniform is actually a strength of our system nationally. And certainly the cybersecurity folks agree with that. Anyway, just want to clear that up. We're not talking about, changing based on other states, just looking at what's possible. And if someone else has already tried it and found it to be a problem, then, we would not even try to do that.
Any other comments?
Well, I think it might be worthwhile to look at how other states are doing redistricting. That's obviously always the hot topic, and nobody on either side is always, or one side is happy and one side isn't, rather. So it might be worthwhile to see what other states are doing, to see if we can do that better, or see what people's opinions are about how other states redistrict.
And when you have the one side that's not happy, then they lose their confidence in elections. And it's sad, but they do.
And does your 72-page report have information on other places that have done different things?
No, we're pretty much focused on North Carolina, and we spend like the last third of it conducting an experiment with some NC State students. So if we did cover it, it was just a very cursory coverage. I will say the National Council of State Legislators, I'm positive, has a sheet. I'll try to look it up while we finish this meeting and put it in the chat if I can find it.
Is the idea of this sometimes talked about of nonpartisan redistricting, is that something that anyone is considering in terms of this group's work? Is it something our group, this committee, should look at, or is that a bigger stretch than what we're trying to do here?
Well, I can give a
think
short.
I'm sorry.
No, I just give a short answer. The steering committee wondered whether you all would choose to explore that or not, because it is, it's a very complex topic. I mean, Bob Orr was a special master for the redistricting, and he said, it's very, very difficult to figure out what makes a fair district, right? It's not very easy. I mean, it's easy to draw a bunch of different options because we have computers that, we have a lot of data now, but it's really hard to define what's fair. So if the committee wants it to look at that, I mean, Andy's written a whole big report on it. I can't wait to read that. But absolutely, you should take a look. It is definitely something that the public is interested in. It's a big issue. So, it's kind of up to you all to decide.
And two, you've got to look at the number of unaffiliated voters in North Carolina now. That is a big party now, unaffiliated.
Is unaffiliated second in terms of numbers or first at this point?
First.
Andy, you're muted.
Sorry, it's number one and it's growing. It's in the mid 30s now, and it's growing more every year.
Yeah, and see, and I'm not saying we should look at nonpartisan districting just because we all know, I think we all know what a big brouhaha that would be. But in a state, we may be one of those states that, because of our high number of unaffiliated, where it makes more sense. Because if you're unaffiliated, you don't want necessarily either of the two main parties drawing the districts. So anyway, it's just food for thought for right now. I guess we'll decide after we do a little more research the best way to go on that.
And when you look at unaffiliated voters, the way they normally vote in Currituck County, the majority of your unaffiliated voters vote Republicans. When you look in a metropolitan area, the majority of the unaffiliated voters vote Democratic. So it was, that's a consideration when we think about redistricting and how people perceive everything is the party affiliation, because there's just so many unaffiliated voters in North Carolina now.
Yeah, another issue surrounding unaffiliated voters that may become more of an issue going forward is their ability to actually get on the ballot. Because if, in theory, if there's more unaffiliated voters in North Carolina, at some point there's going to be a push for more unaffiliated people on the ballot. And is it particularly fair for them to have to get that signature threshold? I think that's a question that might be considered.
And that's
Brian, you
really
have-
this committee is on candidate qualifications and filing. So yeah, absolutely, that one fits.
And I think that's a better use of our time, to be honest with you. I mean, we've kind of, the redistricting thing is so much larger than I think as a committee we could take up. And if we want to produce things that are actionable and we're able to get experts in a particular field and really drill down into productive ways, I think, a ballot access and some of these other issues would be a better use of our time as a committee. But one other that I was maybe get opinions on, and I don't know if there's anything that necessarily, because it is zoomed in a little bit more than what we've talked about so far today, but we've seen a number of court cases, whether between candidates or between larger organizations in the state around residency requirements, and that might be something that that might be worth our time to look into, at least some clarification around that and where those laws are going, especially not necessarily directly related to redistricting, but redistricting does create some interesting questions about residency challenges that we've seen in the past few months.
Okay, Jennifer, I'll turn it back to you.
Well, it sounds like there are a few topics that you're coalescing around. And yeah, residency, absolutely. Unaffiliated candidates, absolutely. Where is that going? What are best practices? How do we do it now? Perhaps I don't know if you wanted to look at the local versus state authority, but I know that there are some local districts where even their individual municipal districts or county commission districts were redrawn by the legislature, overruling what they had done. Preston was one of those. Is that something to look at? Where is that line drawn? And again, do we have to, if you decide that should be something different, do you have to change the Constitution to do that, or can it be a legislative act? Those are some of the things that seem to have bubbled up to the top. I think the redistricting is probably, I think you're all still kind of thinking about whether to take that on or not. So you don't have to decide that today. Clearly, it is a lot of public interest, but and it may be one of those things that you have a general recommendation for and not a very specific one, and that's okay too. So you don't have to decide that today, but at least those other three are ones that sounds like there is a lot of interest for. And then the other thing is public information. But since you're looking at candidates, is the information easy for candidates to understand, easy for voters to understand who are voting for candidates? And is there a better way to get that out? Or is that, I know that the state has no funding for advertising. They put things on the website, they have email lists, but again, just something that might be a topic for the committee. So if there are people on the committee who want to look into one of those topics more deeply, that'd be great. You can kind of divide up your work that way. We might want to also, before this meeting ends, think about what day of the week is best for people. Most committees are meeting once a month. And some of them at lunchtime, some of them at the end of the workday. So, you might, if you want to do a doodle poll, Rachel can do that for you, to figure out when your, next meeting times are over the next several months. You also might want to think about if there is an expert on either the State Board of Elections or an attorney who can talk about some of the laws that are being changed, where what the Constitution says versus what the what legislation says. You might want to have I don't know, a professor or somebody who's an expert in some of this make a presentation to your group. So again, you can think about what topic you might want to hear more about. And then of course there's a lot of background research, and Andy has thrown a bunch of stuff into the chat, and so has Sarah, of things to follow up on. And yeah, probably some other folks who have Andy and Sarah. And so we've got 9 minutes left. So Sarah and Kitty, I don't know what you want to tackle, but yep, Caroline.
Okay, so I mean, Andy, I don't want to put you on the spot, but it just seems like you have answers to a lot of questions, kind of quickly. And I wondered, I know I can only speak for this county, but for this county, and I have siblings in other places, I just think people are hungry for information. They just don't know, they don't understand. And I wonder if it's easy for us to get like a fact sheet, a simple fact sheet on, that we could send out to all of our, however many are on this commission, 60 people who are on this commission, and have them share it with their local newspapers, get word out, so start to educate. I mean, and start that sooner rather than later. If we have those facts, this many counties in the state, have unaffiliated, there's no political party with the school board elections. This many have it, this many are politically affiliated. I mean, I just wonder if we could get facts out to people that would start to have people in the community understanding more and asking more questions. I just wonder.
So Myra, we're going to pick on you because you're in the media.
Sure.
Would that, election fact of the week, is that something your readers would read?
To be honest, no. But there is a way we can incorporate what Caroline was talking about. Typically, the Observer still does, and a lot of publications still do, like voter guides. They usually kick in, we try to start early voting has made us move it all earlier, but they usually kick in right before early voting. And then as part of that, what we do, observer.com, is we have a landing page where you go, this is where you get all your voter information. So it would certainly fit in a format like that. So yeah, I think it would, long story short, I think it would be useful to media. I'd see few outlets as going for a weekly input, but certainly around election years and like this year, and then voter guides, it would have a place, and it would be useful to our readers, because that's the kind of thing they're looking for. And vote, if the kind of reader is seeking out a voting guide, that's the kind of thing they're looking for.
Does that information exist? Is there a quick place to get that information?
I lean heavily on our county school board personally, because I know them, but also their Facebook page, and they in turn lean heavily on the state. They're very good about posting, because all the official figures come from the state. Board of Elections. So they're very good about doing that.
And when you're looking at candidate filing requirements, you also need to get information to potential candidates.
Mm-hmm.
And not, there is a civic engagement committee. It's looking at voter information as well. And so I don't know if you all have thoughts about that. So Fikemi, as a new voter, is this all very confusing?
Yeah, I'm just taking in all the information I can get, just learning.
Actually, you're a really good litmus test. So you can tell us when we're using acronyms that most voters don't know and that kind of thing, because we got a lot of election nerds on this call.
Yeah, I can tell. Lots of great information though, especially in the chat. Definitely looking into these links.
And Rachel, when this is saved, does the chat save as well?
Yeah, it does. I can download that chat file. So, and then I'll put together all the notes from this and I'll include all these resources in there as well.
Yeah, I'd like to see the chats, please.
That's great. So we'll send this around with all those links that Andy and Sarah have posted with more information on the things you've talked about. Do you want Rachel to do a doodle poll to see what day of the week and what time of the week is best for folks?
So
I think because Chris isn't here, I feel like we need to know what Chris's availability is
yeah,
before we just dictate his schedule to him.
yeah,
Maybe, yeah, maybe let him take the poll first.
Yeah.
well, so not to put him on the spot, but he told me to proceed with scheduling this. So,
Yeah.
but this seemed like it was the time that worked the best for everyone. And so I had spoken with Kitty and Sarah about setting it as a recurring meeting, just to happen on the same day and the same time each month.
Mondays at 4.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and Chris didn't say that was a standing challenge for him?
He did not, but I will check in with him and just see if we can nail that down.
And I'll second that. I feel like he needs to be here as one of his former students. He's incredible.
I'll put the pressure on him. I'll tell him that you specifically asked for it.
Yeah, specifically say me.
There's it's a double poke there. Okay, terrific. So we'll probably then, this committee will probably meet 4 o'clock on Monday, 4 weeks from now. But do watch your inboxes for that confirmation. And be thinking about those polling questions. And any of the topics you personally would like to delve into further, because it'd be great if the committee can kind of divide and conquer the few issues. Yeah, Andy.
Sorry, I don't know where the click button is for raising your hand. Is our plan to meet every 4 weeks or to meet monthly? Because they're similar, but not exactly the same.
Yeah.
So I can set it on Zoom for it to meet monthly. So it would be, and I forget how I have it set up,
Maybe the
but I
third
believe
Monday or
I
fourth
believe
Monday.
so. It's either the third or the fourth. But I can send you all kind of like an overall calendar for it.
I think you said the fourth Monday of the month.
Yeah.
Because I know I have meetings the first and the third Monday of every month.
Yep, this is the 4th Monday because January 1st was on a Monday. So, super.
Are we going to wait until then about our questions, or do we need to have the questions ready for you?
If you can think of 4 of them right now in the next 2 minutes, great.
No.
If not, why don't the committee members send those to Sarah and Kitty if you can, think about some. And
if you want to copy me in that email as well, I've been compiling lists for the other committees that the committee members are kind of thinking of a question. They'll just shoot it over to me and the chairs and we'll put it together in a list.
Yeah, I had a related quick question. So in terms, if we find some information we think would be useful to inform the group, should we funnel that to you in the chairs, or is there a group email that we should send to everybody?
Yeah, that would be great if you wouldn't mind just funneling it to me in the chairs as
Okay.
well.
Yeah, Rachel is keeping things on the Google Drive for each committee and also on the website. So Rachel's definitely the person to go to. She's got access to all that. But yeah, if you can copy Chris, your coach on that as well. And if you want to copy me and Bob, that'd be great too.
Any more questions? Well, I think we did very good for our first Zoom meeting.
Me too.
You did great, Kitty.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody's input, and we look forward to hearing from everybody. And
Yep.
thank you, Jennifer and Rachel, and especially Sarah. I know she's getting busy with an election right around the corner, and so we certainly don't want to take too much of her time either, because I know how busy she is.
This is a nice break. My door is shut. It's quiet. Nobody can interrupt.
Yeah, let's make sure we keep our election workers in mind. March the 5th and early voting leading up. We want peaceful, safe, and secure elections. So let's all work to make sure that happens.
And pray for big wins.
That's right. That's right. Pray for a landslide.
That's
Isn't that
right.
what
That's right.
everybody-
Landslides.
Yeah. Well,
All these close things.
anybody else have anything? Rachel, would you like to? Okay. Well, thank y'all.
Okay.
Thanks,
Yeah, have a
y'all.
good
I
one.
think that's it.
See y'all.
Thank
Bye.
y'all. Have a good evening.